The room smelled like polished wood and garlic butter. We were at that new Italian place Delilah picked. Upscale in the kind of way that felt like it was trying too hard. Cloth napkins too stiff, chairs too low. My sister had taken over the entire end of the table with party favors, handwritten menus, and little name cards like we were at someone's wedding rehearsal. Except, of course, one name card was missing. Mine. I showed up late. Well, on time, but late by their standards. Delilah was already halfway through a glass of wine, her voice just loud enough to fill the space around her. Royce, her fiancé, was leaning back in his chair, one arm thrown over the back like he owned the restaurant. I was wearing a button-down that had seen one too many laundromats, no tie, no blazer. When I walked in, no one stood, no one even noticed at first. I had to clear my throat to get a waiter to find me a seat, corner of the table, next to the extra bread basket. "Emery," Delilah said without looking up, "so glad you could finally make it. We thought you gotten lost again, like your career." Laughter. Royce even clapped his hands. I smiled, or tried to. I'd gotten used to this. The little digs, the well-timed jokes. You learn to count your breaths when your name is the punchline at every gathering. Inhale when the attention shifts. Hold it when they chuckle. Exhale through your nose so your jaw doesn't clench too visibly. Royce stood to make a toast. He tapped his glass with his ring, a big chunky thing that screamed new money. "To Delilah's mom," he said, "not mine, who raised the most incredible daughter I've ever met, and to our growing team at Summit Tech, just closed a major funding round." My mother teared up. My father nodded, proud. I sipped my water. Delilah chimed in. "Royce is being humble. He's basically running the show now. Tiny team, big ideas." "Not everyone can keep up in tech, right, Emery?" There it was again, that tone, sugar-coated pity. "Still doing it stuff?" I opened my mouth. My father chuckled. My mother looked away. I closed it. Royce leaned forward. "Small but promising," he said. "We're developing an AI platform for mid-sized enterprises, streamlining their back-end ops." Back-end ops. I had personally reviewed the budget for that project last Thursday. The man sitting across from me, holding court like a king, was my employee. Delilah gave him a kiss on the cheek. "He's brilliant," she said. He smiled, eyes scanning the table like a performer, awaiting applause. No one noticed when I pulled my phone out under the table. I opened our internal app, looked at his project files, metrics, deadlines, approval logs, with my signature at the bottom. He hadn't even changed the default folder names. He kept talking. Jargon, buzzwords. A few family members nodded, pretending to understand. He used words like synergy and paradigm shift. I just watched. Delilah leaned over again. "One day," she said, just loud enough for 3 people to hear, "you'll find your place too, Em." It was almost sweet, if it hadn't been so familiar. There was a time I dropped out of college to take care of Dad after his stroke. Back then, Delilah called me a hero. But years passed. The narrative changed. I was the one who couldn't hack it. I remember birthdays no one showed up to, job updates no one asked about, photos where I held the camera so they wouldn't have to ask me to step out of the frame. Respect isn't taken. It's silently stolen, piece by piece, when you let them narrate your story. But that night, something shifted. I wasn't angry. Not in the way they expected, not hot and messy, no outbursts, just aware. I listened closer. Royce's story had cracks. Timelines didn't match. Claims didn't check out. He said he led the project I had designed from scratch. He said he had met with investors I had personally flown to see. He lied. Not well, but confidently. I pulled up an internal note, flagged a compliance concern under his name. Delilah was laughing again, telling a story about how I once locked my keys in the car during high school. I looked at her, then at him, and I smiled. For the first time that evening, they wanted a show tonight. I think I'll give them one. I raised my glass slowly, clearing my throat just enough to signal I had something to say. The table quieted for a second, maybe out of obligation, maybe surprise. I got as far as, "To Mom," before Delilah cut in. Oh, before you go, I just have to say this," she blurted, standing halfway. "Let's also toast to Emery's dedication I mean, the man's tried everything, app building, consulting, remember the online bookstore idea? She laughed, her voice cutting across the table like silverware on porcelain. One thing's for sure, he never gives up. Even when maybe he should. Laughter exploded like someone had just delivered a killer punchline at a comedy club. My uncle slapped the table. My dad's shoulders bounced with silent amusement. Even my mom gave a polite, stifled chuckle, eyes fixed on her wine. I smiled. It wasn't a joke. It was a declaration. They weren't laughing with me. They were laughing at a version of me that only existed in their heads, the family clown who didn't know he was in costume. I sipped my drink. In my mind, I was slowly detaching. The voices blurred. The faces became props. I was still seated at the table, but I was no longer in the room. Royce leaned forward. Hey man, we all start somewhere. You'll run a team someday. Stick with it. I looked at him. Not directly, just enough to clock his tone, his grin, the little smirk he tried to mask with a sip of his beer. I didn't respond, but inside I logged it. Funny how people who stand on your shoulders forget they're not walking on solid ground. I stood, quietly. Delilah raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. I mumbled something about the restroom, took my phone with me, and walked slowly toward the hallway, away from the noise. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I splashed water on my face, closed my eyes. Then the memories came. Like someone turning the dial on a radio, one station at a time. The 5th grade spelling bee. I'd won it, but that same day, Delilah had her piano recital. Everyone missed the bee. They celebrated her fingers, not my mind. The day I fixed the old desktop when I was 13, spent all weekend updating drivers, cleaning out malware. Delilah told her friends, the tech guy came over. And Mom, always with that same line, let Delilah lead, Emery, you're the quiet one. I stared back into the mirror. They didn't just see me as less. They needed me to be less, so they could shine brighter. When I returned to the table, nothing had changed. The plates were half cleared, dessert was being passed around. Royce was back to talking shop, hands waving as if he were pitching to investors instead of eating tiramisu. I took my seat, same corner, same posture. But something inside me had shifted. I leaned forward, feigning interest. So Royce, where do you see Summit Tech going in the next couple years? He lit up like a Christmas tree. Glad you asked. We're looking at expansion into predictive modeling. Huge market there. Mid-size enterprise clients, tons of data, zero strategy. I want to be the one who gives them structure. I nodded, playing the role. He kept talking, peppering his speech with words I'd written into our internal decks. Data pathways, decision layering, cost-to-value curves. I nearly laughed. He talks like a man who assumes no one in the room is smarter than him. Around the table, forks clinked against plates. My father yawned. My aunt complimented the dessert. No one was really listening to him, but they all respected him. Confidence can sell ignorance in a tailored suit, and people love a good story. They'd bought his. Too bad I wrote the damn script. As coffee cups arrived, I leaned in just a touch closer to Royce. What's the name of your board chairman again? I asked casually, eyes still on my plate. I always forget. Hard to keep track when there are so many layers above you, huh? His fork stopped midair. Delilah squinted. Why would you know that? I looked at her, calm, neutral. Just curious. You know, from one tech guy to another. Her smile flickered. Something behind her eyes tightened. For the first time all night, she didn't look amused. I got home around 11:30. The rain had picked up, turning the street lights outside into blurry smears on the window pane. I dropped my keys on the counter, let my coat fall over the back of the chair, and sat on the edge of the couch without turning on the lights. I didn't need light to see what was playing back in my head. Every laugh, every sideways glance, every time they acted like my silence was proof I had nothing to say. It's not the words that sting, it's the applause that follows them. I poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey, not because I needed to calm down. I wasn't jittery, I was sharpening. It wasn't a drink, it was a ritual, a line drawn. I wasn't letting this go. 3 years ago, I made a mistake, not in code, not in leadership, in judgment. There was this junior dev on an anonymous contract, went by RJ. Never met him in person, but he had the spark. He'd submit brilliant feature suggestions, bold prototypes, talked like someone who could see 5 years ahead of the curve. I went to bat for him. My board wasn't thrilled. Too young. Not enough credentials. I told them credentials don't write code. Vision does. Then I met him. The day he got a promotion, came to HQ for the first time. Royce. I didn't even put it together then. He had used a different last name. Told me his parents were divorced, and he switched between names. I believed him. He thanked me like a man on the edge of something great, said I'd changed his life. A few months later, we pitched a new architecture to investors. Royce went first. His slides were good, too good. Word for word, he used phrases from my private notes. Notes never shared with anyone. I didn't call him out. I wanted to see how far he'd go, how long he'd keep wearing a stolen suit and calling it custom made. I didn't let him steal. I watched him borrow, waiting to see if he'd return it. He never did. That night, sitting in the dim apartment, I opened my laptop. Every silence of mine gave him more volume. Every nod I gave at family dinners made them believe he was someone to admire. And I was just someone they tolerated. I'd given them that story, and now I was done narrating lies. I looked at the post-it I kept on my fridge, yellowed with time. What you allow is what will continue. I clicked into my company dashboard, pulled up Royce's hiring file, his NDAs, his IP clauses, the Slack exchanges, the archived video from his first presentation, time-stamped. Every receipt was still there. I'd never deleted a thing. I opened a private channel. Redemption arc. It started as a joke. Now it was a war room. Schedule a board meeting, I typed to my assistant. Discreet. I'm flipping the script. I hit record on a voice memo. Delilah wants a wedding. I'll give her fireworks. My fingers moved faster than my thoughts. I wasn't building a case for revenge. This wasn't personal. It was correction. A return to truth, to dignity, to balance. Royce had painted himself a hero with the brush I handed him. I was just taking the brush back. I opened a new email, created a burner address, no subject line, just one sentence. I know who you really are. You'll see me soon. I hit send. Then I shut the laptop, sat back, and whispered to the quiet room. This time, I won't whisper when I walk into the room. The sunlight hit my face before I was ready for it. The blinds in my bedroom were only half drawn, letting in those sharp, thin beams that don't ask for permission. My body was heavy, like I'd run a marathon in my sleep. I stayed there for a minute, eyes half open, letting my mind wake up slower than my body. But the sound came quick. Coffee being poured in the kitchen downstairs, a light hum of the morning news, the house pretending everything was normal. My chest tightened. That dinner, those toasts, the laughter, they were still loud in my head. They clinked glasses for success, but whose success was it? I threw the covers off, pulled on a t-shirt, and walked down barefoot. The kitchen smelled like toast and brewed coffee, things that used to mean comfort. My mother stood by the stove, smiling too wide. "There's my boy," she said with sing-song cheer, flipping a pancake like it was just another Sunday. I gave her a nod, mumbled a morning. My father sat at the counter reading a sports article on his iPad like always. Except today wasn't like always. She held up her phone, waving it toward the screen like a badge. "Look, Em, I was just telling Barbara, Royce got featured in that tech magazine. He's so brilliant, honestly, the whole package." Barbara smiled back through the video call. "You've raised a winner, Sandra." I bit the inside of my cheek. I had written that feature. My team had submitted the draft, my name stripped, Royce's story polished for public consumption. After a few polite nods and a fake sip of coffee, I excused myself. Upstairs in my study, I closed the door, sat down at my desk, and opened the drawer I hadn't touched in months. It was full of files, contracts, backup drives. I started scanning through one document at a time. Royce's projects, my budget approvals, my drafts, my product notes. Page after page, I found traces of me in his success story. I wasn't behind the curtain, I built the damn stage. I took my phone, began photographing each document, created a folder, labeled it The Truth. Then came the knock. 2 quick taps. Delilah. She stepped in like she owned the air between us. Hair perfect, smile bright, voice loud enough for the guests in the hall to hear. "Em," she beamed. "Big day for Royce, huh?" Hope you're proud of him. I stood, calm, collected. I'm proud when I see real merit. She blinked. You mean when you think someone deserves it? I didn't flinch. She laughed, a quick, sharp one. Still bitter? Come on, Em, don't be like that. This is his moment. I didn't answer, just stared at her. And for once, she didn't know how to keep the spotlight. She left with a final shrug. Alone again, I sat back down and pulled up my laptop. A quote came to mind, one I'd scribbled years ago in a notebook during a rough pitch day. You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. Maya Angelou. I whispered it out loud. Let it fill the room. This wasn't just a comeback. It was the start of a correction. Tonight, I'd stop being a footnote. I'd speak with receipts. I clicked through one more folder, found a memo from 2 years ago. Royce had been invited to a gala, accepted an award. The photo showed him on stage, arms wide, soaking in applause. But the plaque and the photo listed me, CEO Emery Blaylock. He'd stood on my name to build his own. I sat back, staring at the screen. My pulse was calm, but my purpose was roaring. Tonight, I whispered, they'll see me. By the time I arrived, the dining room looked like a magazine spread. White linen, polished silver, wine already breathing in the decanter. Delilah had outdone herself, down to the way she folded the napkins like swans. She stood at the head of the table, too cheerful. Royce hovered beside her, chest out, already soaking in praise that hadn't even started yet. I walked in without speaking, pulled out my chair, and sat down at the far end. My parents didn't flinch. Like everything that had happened before was just another family dinner. Politeness, pretending to be peace. They dress dysfunction in politeness and call it peace. I looked around the table and told myself this was the last night I'd sit here as the afterthought, the ghost at the celebration. That version of me, he doesn't eat here anymore. Royce launched into one of his monologues not 5 minutes after the salad was served. Something about launching a new tech division, global impact, scalable infrastructure, buzzwords that bounced off the walls like tennis balls. Delilah chimed in, sliding her hand into his, talked about the upcoming engagement party, her voice sweet enough to cause cavities. He's just so stable, she said, almost staring at me as she said it. Successful, grounded. My father raised his glass. To Royce, to the future. I lifted mine, sipped, smiled politely. Pride is loud when it thinks the room is deaf. I let them talk. I let them toast. I let them bask in their illusions. Then I leaned forward, gently tapped my fork against my glass. The sound rang clear. Conversations stopped. Eyes turned. Funny thing about stability, I said, smiling. It's only impressive until someone checks the foundation. They froze. I didn't. I've seen that new tech proposal before. Every line, every graph, every bullet point. I paused. I wrote it 3 years ago. Royce chuckled, but it came out thin. Hey man, coincidence maybe? I held my gaze steady. You can call it that until someone runs a version comparison. You could feel the temperature drop. Delilah's fingers tensed. She said nothing. My mother blinked quickly, suddenly very interested in her fork. My father put his wine glass down, quieter than usual. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't need to. I just hope, I continued, voice level, when people celebrate others, they know what they're clapping for. I turned to my mother. Success shouldn't have shadows if it's earned in light. Then I leaned back, done eating, done pretending. Just some food for thought, since we're all here to share, right? No one spoke for a beat. Royce tried to change the tone with a joke that didn't land. Delilah pivoted the conversation to wedding colors, napkin shades, menu options. Her voice wobbled near the edges, but she pushed through. That's her talent, burying fire under frosting. I stayed quiet, finished my plate, let the storm pass around me. Internally, I'd already closed the chapter. That was my warning. The next time I speak, it won't be this quiet. As I stood to excuse myself, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen, a message from a former colleague I hadn't heard from in months. Found something. You'll want to see this. Call me. I flipped the phone face down on the table, heart steady. Let's see how deep the rot goes. The house felt still, but not peaceful. That quiet where things look normal, but feel wrong. I stepped into the sitting room and noticed the family album wide open on the coffee table, one of the thick leather-bound ones my mother always pulled out for holidays or guests. Delilah sat cross-legged on the floor beside it, flipping pages and laughing softly. I moved closer and my eyes landed on the caption, Merrick Family, 2018. I knew that photo. I remembered it well. Grandma's backyard, her birthday, all of us lined up by the azaleas. But something was off. I stared at the picture for a long second, then longer, and then it hit me. I wasn't in it. Not just cropped, not hidden, erased. The space where I stood in the original print, gone. Just open air now, like I'd never been part of that day. My stomach turned. That photo had been a gift to me. I'd asked for it. I kept a copy in my apartment for years, and I knew what I looked like that day. Blue shirt, one hand in my pocket, crooked smile. I cleared my throat. "Where's the full photo?" I asked Delilah. She looked up, shrugged. "I guess Mom updated the frame during redecorating, or maybe it got damaged." She said it like it didn't matter, like it was wallpaper. I said nothing. Not yet. Later, I passed by the mantel in the next room, saw another photo frame, older. My face was still in that one, but the picture had sagged backward behind the glass, barely visible unless you bent over. Mom offered me tea, her voice soft, not quite meeting my eyes. Dad didn't look up from the paper. I stood in a room filled with people I shared blood with, and somehow I felt more invisible than ever. I was about to leave the room when my phone buzzed. It was Aunt Ruth. Her voice came through tight, heavy. "Emery, your grandmother passed about an hour ago. Peacefully." At home. The room didn't move, but everything inside me did. Grandma, the only one who called me by my middle name, who saved my childhood drawings in her Bible, the only one who never once asked me to explain myself, she just saw me. Grief didn't slam into me, it leaked in slowly like a crack under the door, and I just stood there, unsure what to do with it. Delilah took over, calling relatives, coordinating details with her event planner voice, the same one she used for her engagement party checklist. I sat alone in the hallway with the album still open on my lap. What face had Grandma remembered? Mine, or the version the rest of them preferred, absent, cropped, corrected. By sundown, guests began arriving for the impromptu memorial. Candles lit, chairs pulled into circles. I stayed in the back. Delilah gave a polished little speech about unity and legacy. Grandma loved us all equally, even when things felt hard, she said. Later, Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. "She always asked about you," she said, then added, "But she was sad. You stopped coming around." Dad chimed in from the doorway. "You distanced yourself. That's why people don't know where to place you anymore." That stung more than I let show. They were rewriting the story while it was still fresh in the air. I felt like screaming, but I just nodded. Inside, something snapped. They were building a version of events I no longer recognized and expecting me to nod along, like my silence was a contract. I remembered a line I once read from Maya Angelou. "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." I cornered Delilah quietly before she went back to the guests. "Did Grandma ever ask about the family photos?" I asked. She paused, just long enough. "She loved you, Emery." "But," she said. "But. Always a but." That night, I went to my room and started pulling things together. Old editions of photo albums, letters Grandma had written me, cards with her perfect cursive, her way of underlining my name twice. Every note where she said she was proud, that she saw me. I created a folder on my laptop, memories I never lost. Before bed, I reached for a small box I hadn't opened in months. Inside, I found one last envelope in Grandma's handwriting, dated last spring. She wrote about how the world had become too loud for people like us, how she regretted staying quiet when I needed her louder, how she hoped I'd never let their silence shrink me. At the end, she wrote, "You carry our hope in ways you don't yet see." I pressed the paper to my chest, closed my eyes. They might have tried to erase me, but tomorrow, I show them what was never gone. Even after the memorial guests left, dinner plates cleared, the air still carried its weight. I stayed at the dining room table, hands wrapped around a small heirloom Delilah had promised back. It was a brass locket I remembered Grandma giving to me once. She handed it to me at some holiday, said it was mine to keep. Then it vanished, like leaves in a storm. Delilah caught me holding it tonight, fingernails echoing promises. She asked, "Do you want to keep it as a memorial piece?" Her voice gentle but sharp, like she knew but didn't care. I looked at the locket, cold metal against my skin. "I would, if it ever belonged to me," I said. The room paused. My father's fork froze mid-lift. Mom's eyes narrowed. I could feel the shadows I'd lived in thinning around me. I slipped the locket into my pocket. Fingers brushed something else, the crisp edge of evidence. Contracts, signatures, email threads. Proof in my pocket that this gift, that project, that name they all applauded. It was my labor, my mind, my risk. I drew out my phone quietly, thumb brushing over photos of budget sheets where my name was the decision maker, documents where Royce's voice took credit for ideas I initiated. I said quietly, "Everything you see belongs to me, from what Royce took credit for to the promises Delilah made." Royce's face leaked color. Delilah's smile flickered. Mom rested her hand on the table as if to steady herself. I let the silence grow, like the spaces between chords in a hymn. "Proof doesn't always come with fireworks," I said. "Sometimes it's just facts." Royce tried to laugh it off, but even his laugh hit against glass. Mom asked, "Emery, what's going on?" I met her eyes. "I'll explain soon." I rose, excused myself, and walked to my study. Quiet steps through hallway carpet, past family photos, past ones where I was still there. Inside the study, I closed the door, stacked the documents, labeled the folder, Truth Through Time, something steady I could hold when the world tried to tell me I didn't exist. I thought of Maya Angelou's words, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." I paced, locket clutched in one hand, the folder open on screen in front. I wasn't planning for revenge. I was reclaiming my narrative, steady, calm, precise. I wrote notes for tomorrow's speech, not incendiary, but undeniable. Then the ping. My phone glowed. An email from a board member I barely spoke to. "Curious about the presentation you're allegedly putting together. When can I see it?" Heart steady, mind sharp. Tomorrow they'll hear me on their terms. I got there early. Grand Hall lit up like a wedding cake, soft white floodlights, long red carpet, stage glinting under chandeliers. The banners flanked Royce and Delilah's smiling faces, polished and perfect. Guests mingled, holding glasses of champagne, laughter bouncing off the marble floor. I stood in the back for a moment, watching, absorbing. Everyone looked like they belonged in that room, except me. And yet, I was the only one carrying truth. My folder sat tucked under my arm. Labeled plain, Truth. No need for drama. No flames, just facts. Royce took the stage like a man claiming the world, his voice booming, arms spread, thanking partners, mentors, and of course, our future. The crowd clapped. Delilah beamed, hands clutched to her chest like she hadn't staged every word. Then I was introduced, guest of honor, an empty title, thrown like a bone. I walked to the stage, nodded to the event coordinator, who, without hesitation, handed me the mic. Royce paused. I'd like to say something," I said, "about the work you've been celebrating." The room shifted, subtle, like a tide pulling back before the wave hits. Royce's speech slid off the screen behind him. I tapped a button, and my own slideshow started. First slide, internal budget docs with my name. Next, email threads with my approvals. Then came media clippings, press articles calling Royce founder, the visionary, CEO. I kept my voice steady. These contracts, these plans, these logos, they don't exist without my signature, my designs, my leadership. I looked straight at the crowd. I am the CEO. Royce is my employee. Everything you praised was mine before his name ever touched it. Silence hung heavy. Then gasps. One man dropped his drink. Delilah turned pale. Royce's eyes darted, looking for an exit that wasn't there. My father's jaw clenched. My mother. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Royce tried to cut in. "Let's not..." Let's not pretend, I said over him, that family loyalty means silence. I kept quiet for years in the name of peace, but peace doesn't exist in shadows. I let the folder fall to the floor. Today, the name you associate with success, it's not borrowed. It's earned. It's mine. Shutters clicked. Reporters snapped photos. Phones held high, live streaming every breath. A wave of murmurs spread like fire. Delilah opened her mouth, but nothing came out, just air. One board member approached me quietly. We need to talk soon. My parents sat stiff, arms crossed. They'd seen me, but never like this. I stepped off the stage, no bow, no farewell, just walked. Lights dimmed behind me. And then someone from the crowd said, not loud, but loud enough, "Finally, we see you." Backstage, I heard Royce hiss at Delilah, "We have to do damage control." I checked my phone. A notification blinked. The video already had over 80,000 views. Comments pouring in. I put the phone down, steady breath in my chest. Tonight wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my name. And tomorrow, I'd start healing the parts of me they never even saw. Mornings don't feel like war anymore. There's no rush, no dread hanging in the air like a ceiling about to collapse. I wake up early, not because I have to, but because I want to. Coffee brews quietly. The silence in the house used to echo like judgment. Now it's peace. Weeks have passed since the stage, the speech, the spotlight. That viral video has faded into the stream of yesterday's noise. My name had its moment, and now it's mine to live with. I sit at a small cafe near the bayou, tucked into a corner that overlooks a quiet patch of trees. I'm not checking my phone every 5 minutes. I'm not scanning faces for approval. I'm writing in my journal. Nothing fancy, just, for the first time, I feel like I belong to me. Later that afternoon, a message from my father. No drama, no explanation, just, we saw everything. That was all. Strange how a few words from him could weigh more than 1,000 from anyone else. My mother, still quiet. I stopped expecting the apology, stopped chasing it. I got an invite to speak at a local women's leadership summit. At first, I hovered over the email, unsure, not out of fear, but wondering if I needed to speak at all. Then I remembered something, how many times I stayed silent to make others comfortable. That ends now. I RSVP'd, yes, not to impress, just to offer someone else the nudge I never got. Delilah messaged too, not with guilt, not with warmth, just curiosity. She asked to meet. I agreed, not to reconcile, just to finish the page. We met at a neutral cafe downtown. She looked tired, softer somehow, but still guarded. "Why didn't you tell anyone sooner?" she asked. I looked out the window for a beat, then back at her. Because I needed to know who I was without the noise. She nodded, more to herself than to me. We didn't hug. We didn't linger. But as I left, I realized something. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's freedom. And that freedom wasn't for her. It was for me. Royce, his fall was quick, quiet. His investors backed out. His board dissolved the trust they once had. He tried to sell his version of the story online. Misunderstood genius. Brother backstabbed me. The usual chorus. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Truth has its own legs. My legal team finalized it all. He's out. His name, his face, his spin, none of it tied to me anymore. I posted one last statement online. Let your silence speak louder than their spin, then logged off for the week. A few days later, I took a walk along the park trail near Allen Parkway. Used to come here before big presentations, dreaming about one day being seen. Halfway down the path, a young woman stopped me. She looked maybe 22, nervous, but determined. "I watched your video," she said. "Applied for a scholarship because of it. You gave me courage." I didn't know what to say, just nodded. My voice caught in my chest. We shook hands and she walked away. The impact was real. That moment right there, that was worth more than the applause. I signed up after that to mentor a few local women building their own businesses. Nothing flashy, no press release, just a quiet promise to do more than survive. That night at home, I wrote a letter, not to Royce, not to Delilah, not to my parents, to me. You weren't too quiet. You weren't invisible. They just didn't look hard enough. I folded it, slipped it between the pages of my journal. Then I lit a candle. One for every version of me I'd buried trying to be palatable. I didn't burn them away, I honored them. Burned what hurt, kept what shaped. The peace I used to imagine like a far-off place. It's here now, not loud, not dramatic, just mine. Later that night, laptop closed, tea in hand, a new notification blinked across the screen. Your speech has been nominated for a Human Dignity Award. I sat back. Let it soak in. And I smiled, not because I needed the validation, but because I'd answered the world once on their terms. Tomorrow, I'll answer again, but this time on mine.